What's up everyone, Aiyulol here, long time no see. Bard versus Paladin, let's go. I guess the first thing I should say is that both are good and both are equally preferred in endgame raids. I hope you got that. Both are equally good and preferred. Stop worrying about which support is better and instead worry about which one is right for your playstyle. Better yet, play both. Supports are so wanted that it's easy to get into parties even with subpar gear and engravings, making them really effective as alts or sub-characters. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about what the differences actually are. First of all, one of the more obvious ones that's also kind of a bait. Bard is ranged and Paladin is melee. In reality though, a Bard usually plays in melee range while a Paladin can play at a melee to mid-range distance. What gives? Why can't I stay back as a Bard where it's safe? To understand this, you have to remember the identity system. We have plenty of skills we can cast at range, but the biggest gauge builders require us to be close to the boss. More importantly than that, to give shields with Wind of Music as a Bard, we need to actually hit our party members with the AoE. That means that if I cast the ability in the middle of nowhere, only I receive the shield. I'll touch more on positioning differences as we go through the skills, but the takeaway is that both supports play relatively close to the boss. Melee versus ranged, I think, is more of a flavor difference between the two supports rather than a hard playstyle difference. Secondly, Bard is a female character and Paladin is a male. For a lot of people, this point alone will be enough to decide on a character, so I'm just leaving this here. Unfortunately, although Smilegate has announced that they are addressing this, as of right now the two support classes are still gender locked. Take that as you will. Now let's talk about the differences in skills. I won't be going over each and every skill, but just the main support ones. As a general overview, the abilities of each support are mainly the same. It isn't really a case where Paladins let their party members fly in the sky while Bards let them tunnel underground. In general, if you hear that one support class can do X, chances are the other one has an extremely similar ability. With the release of the artist class who can portal her allies, this isn't necessarily true anymore. I won't include the full artist description here because she's still too new, which means her skills and abilities are still really likely to continue to be reworked. But aside from this gimmicky ability, all three supports still have a very comparable toolkit. That being said though, they're not completely the same or else we wouldn't need three different classes. There are some small and subtle differences that I'll go over here. I think the biggest difference between the two lies in their use of the identity gauge. After all, the identity is what makes a class unique, hence the name. Both classes need to land attacks to fill up their gauge, but a Paladin system is much more simple. You fill up your orb with holy energy, and then when it's full, you can activate one of two auras. The blue aura is used to buff your personal damage and augment your sword skills, while your yellow aura provides a damage buff. Bards have three separate bars, or bubbles, to their identity. As soon as one bar is filled up, they can play one of two songs. Sound familiar? The Z song, Serenade of Valor, provides an attack buff, while the X song, Serenade of Salvation, lets you drop an AoE healing circle on the ground. The more bars you have saved up, the stronger the effect. Each song has 3 levels of power, depending on if you had 1, 2, or 3 bars filled when you played it. Right away you can see that bards have a lot more to think about. While paladins can just fill up their orb and turn on the aura to give all their buffs, bards have to choose between attack buffs or healing. They also have to think about managing their bars and whether it's better to use a 1-bar song or save for 2 or 3, etc. This is a big reason why you might hear that paladins provide more offensive power to a party. They can turn on their aura and give their damage buff 100% of the time, while also providing damage reduction and healing over time, since it's all baked into the same ability. A bard needs to choose between the damage buff or their heal, and using one means they can't use the other until they fill the gauge again. Also, they need to consider how many bars they have because that affects the power level of the buff. If a party is taking lots of damage, a bard might be forced to heal, which means no attack buff for the party. So what's the trade-off? Well, at the cost of having to choose between attack and healing, a 3-bar song can provide a more powerful effect than a paladin's aura. Bards are more flexible. If a party takes a big burst hit, a bard can quickly heal everyone up by choosing to heal. If nobody's taking damage, a bard can spend their bars on a big attack buff instead. In that situation, a paladin doesn't really have a choice. Their aura only has one mode, on or off, and the heal over time can feel painfully slow when everyone's at low HP. Here's a chart so you can compare the various differences. You can see that for a bard to match a paladin's attack buff, they need to play a 2-bar or better Serenade of Valor. Even then, the buff is still 4 seconds shorter. At 3 bars, a bard's attack song gives 5% more attack and has the same duration as a paladin's aura. But remember, this comes at the cost of their heal and has no damage reduction effect. I won't go over every difference, but I think you get the gist. If you want to take a look, I recommend pausing the video to look at the chart. To sum it up, I wouldn't say either one is exactly better, but I hope this helps you see the differences so you can pick which one fits your playstyle. If you like something simple and reliable, a Paladin is for you. If you like a little bit more depth and complexity to your gameplay, maybe you should consider playing a Bard. First, let's talk about Heavenly Tune. This is the Bard's main signature attack buff. It has a massive range of 24 meters, lasts for 8 seconds, increases attack and cast speed by 8%, and gives 40% increased mana regen. With the Tough Tune tripod, the attack speed buff goes up to 16%. You want to cast this and cast it often. Paladin's Guardian Angel is very similar. It has the exact same range and duration. And if you select the right level 10 tripod, also gives 40% increased mana regen, same as Bard. This tripod can be leveled up to 5, letting Paladin give up to 50% increased mana regen. Heavenly Tune and Guardian Angel increase the party's attack by 15% of the caster's attack power, and also provides a flat 6% attack power buff on top of that. More importantly, both supports give the same attack power buff to the party. The differences can be summed up as follows. Bard's buff gives 16% attack speed, while Paladin's buff gives 10% more mana regen than Bard's and 20% damage reduction. Which one is preferred? Honestly, most DPS players in Pugs don't care about the differences in buffs between the two supports. All they care about is the attack buff, which again is the same. You'd be hard pressed to find a DPS main that knows the subtle differences like Paladin's giving 10% more mana regen. And in my opinion, it doesn't even make a big difference. The second set of attack buffs, Sonic Vibration and Wrath of God, actually have some bigger differences in terms of playstyle. First of all, they both provide the same amount of attack power, so let's just leave that aside. They both also provide super armor, making you resistant to knockbacks. So what's the big difference? Paladin's buff affects a 24 meter radius, just like the other set of attack buffs, making it so that any DPS remotely on your screen will receive the buff. It's very easy to use. Bard's buff is a targeted AoE circle on the ground. A party member has to be standing on the circle to receive the attack buff, so placing it is a challenge. Remember, you have to hit the boss to activate a lot of effects like runes or building gauge, making it difficult to do that and also hit all of your DPS members with the buff, especially when you have all kinds like head attackers, which are in front of the boss, back attackers, which are behind the boss, and ranged, who can pretty much position themselves wherever the hell they want. In terms of this set of attack buffs, Paladin definitely wins. Even though they give the same amount of attack power, a Paladin can more reliably give the buff to all members of the party. Now let's talk about the differences between the two classes' main shielding abilities. Bard has Wind of Music, while Paladins have Holy Protection. The first thing and biggest difference you should look at is the range. Bard's Wind of Music has an incredibly short range of 4 to 5 meters, which is basically a small AoE around the caster. You need to be standing next to your allies and hit them with the ability to actually shield them. A Paladin's shield, like their attack buffs, again has a massive screen-wide radius of 24 meters. That means that as a Paladin, you can shield all of your allies without worrying about positioning, whereas Bards need to be next to their allies. Now the Paladin's shield also has a slightly longer base duration, although that's not that important. So what's the trade-off? Let's talk about base skills first without any tripods. If you look at the shield values, Wind of Music provides a 25% max HP shield, whereas Holy Protection only provides a 20% HP shield. In addition, Wind of Music has a base 18-second cooldown, whereas Holy Protection has a 30-second cooldown. In terms of pure shield strength and uptime, Bard shields are a lot more effective, at the cost of being a little harder to use. However, tripods make these two skills a lot more unique. With Bard's Wind of Music, there are no notable tripods that change how the skill works on a fundamental level. You take tripods that decrease the cooldown and increase the amount of identity gauge gained. It's worth noting though that Wind of Music generates a crazy amount of gauge for Bards. That's why you really want to hit the boss with it along with your allies, meaning a lot of the times you'll be stuck in melee range. A Paladin's Holy Protection, on the other hand, has a few interesting tools. The first option you can select on it is to increase the shield strength. With the Robust Protection tripod, you can increase the 20% HP shield strength by up to 158%, which means a 52% max HP shield. This turns Holy Protection into a thick shielding ability, even though the shield duration drops by 2 seconds to 4 seconds, matching Wind of Music. Note that since the cooldown of the skill is so long, the actual shielding output between the two supports is really similar. Bard gives a 30% HP shield every 18 seconds, while Paladins give a 52% HP shield every 30 seconds. You can think of Bards giving smaller but frequent shields, while Paladins are the opposite. However, Paladins also have the option of Cleanse. This means that when they apply their shield, it also cleanses one harmful debuff. This is an extremely powerful utility that bards don't have access to, and in certain raids where there are dangerous debuffs, this can be a game changer. However, this comes at the cost of increased shield strength, as you can only pick one or the other. Generally, paladins will use the shield strength tripod and swap to the cleanse tripod when the fight requires it. One good example of this is phase 1 of the Vulcan Legion raid, where the wolves can apply a stacking bleed debuff to your allies, and if this bleed debuff reaches 3 stacks, it does a powerful line attack that does a lot of damage, while a paladin can cleanse these bleed stacks, making everyone's life a lot easier. Note that in an actual raid scenario, the cleanse ability is a little harder to use than you might think. Since it's attached to your main shielding ability, you might find it difficult to decide whether to hold your shield or not. Your party members might eat an attack which needs debuffing, but if they don't, you really just want to cast your shield for the protective utility. Unlike other games like WoW, there's no set time or add-on which tells you when you need to cleanse. It all depends on the randomness of the fight, the boss pattern, and whether or not your raid members actually get hit. Oftentimes you may find yourself casting the shield only to need the cleanse afterwards with the ability on cooldown. This is one of those things that'll come with experience and I guess the skill of the player. Also note that in the raid that I just mentioned, you can actually remove the debuff with a battle item called a Panacea, or as a bard you can bring a Holy Talisman which can remove the debuff of nearby allies. For the last tripod, paladins can also make their shield heal for 8% of max HP after the buff expires. In return, this adds 10 seconds cooldown to the already long 30 seconds. You can see that both skills are quite unique. In terms of raw protective ability, I'd give the edge to Bard's Wind of Music. It provides frequent and powerful shields with high uptime, mitigating a lot of damage. Paladin's Holy Protection definitely shines in terms of ease of use since it has such a huge range, and also has the upper hand in terms of utility, with the ability to both cleanse and heal up minor chip damage. The next protection skill is a more reactive ability. Both are channeling AoE targeted effects that provide massive damage reduction for a short time. Paladin's buff is slightly shorter and has a shorter cooldown. At level 10, a Bard's Rhapsody gives super armor during channeling, while Paladins get a 30% HP shield for themselves only. Paladin's buff provides 70% damage reduction to themselves and anybody in the AoE, whereas a Bard's buff gives up to 75% damage reduction, in addition to a 15% shield for their party. However, bards only receive 50% damage reduction for themselves. Now, it might be a little confusing keeping track of all the numbers, but the gist of it is bards provide more protection for their parties, 5% more damage reduction as well as a 15% shield, while paladins take care of themselves better. They get 20% more damage reduction for themselves as well as a 30% HP shield. It's often said that bards provide more defensive options to a party, and this skill is one of the reasons. Now, I wouldn't say that there's a clear all-around winner, but bards definitely win in terms of protecting others. Now let's look at both supports' options for damage reduction. A Bard's Guardian Tune provides a 30% damage reduction buff over Paladin's Holy Land, which gives 25%. But what you really should be paying attention to is the range. As we've seen so far, Paladin buffs usually have a huge range, where Bard buffs require a bit of positioning. This time though, it's the opposite. Guardian Tune has a massive 24 meter range, while a Paladin's Holy Land is a small AoE patch that allies have to stand in. Think Consecrated Ground from WoW. In addition, with the powerful protection tripod, Guardian Tune can provide all the way up to a massive 56% reduction in damage. Or, with the Endless Protection tripod, a Bard's buff grants up to 20% max HP shield after it expires. You can see that Guardian Tune is a much more powerful defensive ability in all areas from ease of use, to power, to utility. In fact, Holy Land is the first skill you cut as a paladin unless you're going for an extreme support build, often in the favor of a movement ability or a second counterattack. Oh, did I mention Bard's Guardian Tune also has the ability to negate one CC inducing attack during its duration? Yeah, that's pretty good. Lastly, let's compare the awakening skills. Both supports provide a massive shield for their awakening ability. A bard provides a shield equal to 100% of the bard's max HP, while paladins only provide 80%. But if you didn't know, every class has a different HP and defense coefficient. Considering the HP differences between the two classes, they're actually pretty similar because paladins innately have a higher HP as a warrior. Using a Bard's Awakening provides them with one full bar of gauge, even if you don't hit the boss. On the other hand, a paladin needs to actually hit the attack on the boss to get their gauge filled. In addition, if you hit the boss with your Awakening, a Bard provides 30% attack power reduction, 20% attack speed down, and 40% move speed down for 10 seconds, whereas a paladin doesn't get anything. Note that on bosses, only the 30% attack power down applies. Honestly, you use this awakening for the shield and to fill up your identity. In those areas, the two skills are pretty much the same. No winner here. To sum it up, in terms of attack buffs, they're similar in the actual attack power buff with minor side differences. It's much easier for paladins to provide the attack buff to all party members, so I definitely give the edge to paladin given that they provide more consistent offensive buffs and you don't have to sacrifice their heal to give them. In terms of defense buffs, bards are generally stronger with their tripods and protection for the party. For shields, I would give bards the upper hand as well. For healing, paladins can heal minor damage with their holy protection skill and has no option for big burst healing, so they're better at keeping their party alive through sustain and making sure that everyone remains at high health. Bards, on the other hand, have no heal other than their identity, and they can't heal up small damage. Instead, they have big burst healing at the cost of their attack power buffs. I would say that if your party is taking small but consistent damage, a paladin's heals are much more effective, while if your party is taking big bursts of damage, a bard is more effective. Now again, this isn't going to be a be-all end-all definition, but to sum it up, paladins are extremely tanky due to their character HP and defense, making them very stable. They should rarely die and also provide reliable attack buffs to all party members. They also do more personal DPS than bards, although less than their main DPS class, but have less defensive or care options for the party. Paladins tend to synergize more with sustained DPS classes. Bards are extremely good at party care and protection. They have low personal DPS, and managing their identity requires more effort than paladins, although it has the benefit of more power and flexibility. Bards tend to synergize more with burst DPS classes. Alright, I know that was a lot to take in, but I wanted to get all this out there once and for all to hopefully help out our support community. Again, with the nature of videos, it's impossible to fit everything in one video, but I try to be as comprehensive as possible. If you have any questions, come find me on stream or leave me a comment down below. This has been Ayu, and until next time, bye you.